The wind has teeth. It gnaws through the stitched hides of the 14 people huddled at the world's edge. This is not a forest. Not anymore. It is the ghost of one. A skeletal fringe of dwarf birch and twisted willow that marks the final surrender of trees to the endless, roaring grass for these Homo sapiens. The woods have been everything larder, shield, and sanctuary. Now, the larder is empty. The shield is full of hole, and the sanctuary feels like a tomb. So okay, the old man whose face is a map of 60 hard winters, tastes the air. It is a taste he has come to dread the clean, sharp cold of a world without life. A wind that has traveled 1,000 miles without the scent of pine or prey. His people are thin. Their movements economical. Their eyes deep set with a hunger that has become a permanent resident. Their knowledge, the intricate tapestry of survival skills passed down through generations, is becoming useless. It is a lexicon for a language the land no longer speaks. They know the ways of the forest deer, but the deer are gone. They know which roots to dig in the loamy earth beneath the trees, but the ground is iron. The choice is not spoken. It is a weight in the hollow of every stomach. To stay is to manage a slow, cold starvation. To watch the children weaken in the fire's window, feeding the last of the brittle branches to a flame that gives little warmth. To leave is to walk into the teeth of the wind, into a featureless ocean of frozen grass where there is no cover, no fuel, and no knowledge. It is to abandon the wisdom of every ancestor who ever lived and died in the shade of the trees. A young woman, Bila, pulls her child closer, showing a sliver of dried tendon she has saved. A gesture of defiance against the encroaching emptiness. Her knuckles are white where she grips the child's furs. The decision crystallizes around Terra K. He does not live by command, but by sight. He has watched the herds of horse and bison, the last of the great Pleistocene megafauna, moving like shadows on the far horizon. For weeks, his gaze has followed them, his mind unlearning the forest to read the new, brutal grammar of the steppe. He straightens his stiff limbs and points. Not back into the dying woods, but out into the great, terrifying nothing. There is a moment of collective stillness. The silent intake of breath from 13 souls. This is the fulcrum of their existence. The pivot on which their entire lineage will either swing toward a new future or shatter. The primal fear is overwhelming. The open space is a predator in itself. A vast, unblinking eye that sees everything and offers no place to hide. But the trust in the old man's foresight, trust built over a lifetime of small, correct choices, is a stronger force. When they rise, they gather the few tools that define them as ancient humans' flint blades, bone awls, hide bags holding little more than hope. They turn their backs on the only world their human ancestors have ever known. The first step onto the mammoth steppe is a physical blow. The wind hits them with the force of a solid object, tearing at their clothes, stealing the breath from their lungs. The scale of the landscape is a form of madness. They are specks of life in an abyss of brown and grey. Their shadows impossibly long in the low, cold sun. The familiar sounds of the forest. The snap of a twig. The call of a bird. Are gone. Replaced by the single, monolithic roar of the wind. The steppe does not merely kill with coal. It kills with exposure. For 3 days, they rot, and the wind is a thief, stealing warmth, stealing morale, stealing the very moisture from their breath. The children are carried now, their small bodies wrapped in the thinnest parts of the adult's own cloaks. A quiet act of altruism that costs the carriers dearly. They have no shelter but the lee of a shallow ridge. No fuel but the hope of finding a patch of dried dung. Their world has been reduced to the next step, and the one after that. This is the raw mathematics of prehistoric life: energy expended versus energy gained. The equation is deep in the negative. Hope, once a flickering flame, is now just a bed of cooling embers. It is Kale, a young hunter whose eyes are still sharp enough to see promise where others see only desolation. Who finds it? He stumbles in a shallow, frozen riverbed, his hand landing not on stone, but on the curved, gold ivory of a tusk. It is a boneyard, a graveyard of giants, a place where the slow currents of an ancient river, now long dead, gathered the bodies of mammoths over centuries. The ground is littered with them, massive skulls, the size of boulders, lie half buried in the permafrost. Ribs, each one the length of a man, curve out of the earth like the timbers of a colossal, forgotten ship. They are standing in a testament to death's slow patience, a place where the weight of ages has gathered the titans. For the clan, it is an awesome, terrifying sight. It is a monument to the very forces that are trying to extinguish them. But Terrake does not see an end. He sees a beginning. He runs a hand along a colossal femur, its surface scoured smooth by wind and time. This is wood. This is stone. This is shelter. The idea is so audacious, so contrary to every instinct of their forest-dwelling hominid history, that it takes a moment to root, build a home from the dead. The work is brutal. It is a battle against weight, against the frozen earth, against their own exhaustion. They use their most effective pieces of lithic technology, flint hand axes, to chop at the icy ground, digging a shallow pit that will serve as the foundation, a sunken floor to escape the worst of the wind. The mammoth skulls, too heavy to lift, become the cornerstones, their empty eye sockets staring out at the plains. Kale and the other young men use their combined strength to heave the massive ribs and vertebrae into place, interlocking them to form a crude, domed framework. It is an act of desperate, collective intelligence. No single mind could conceive of it. It emerges from the group, a shared vision born of a shared threat. He and the other women work with bone awls and sinew, stitching together rotting hide scavenged from the skeletons. Their fingers numb and bleeding, they are inventing architecture. Million years ago, their ancestors sought the shelter of cave. Now, on a world with no caves, they must build their own. The child is passed from one to another, kept in the center of their working huddle, a living reminder of the stakes. This is the core of their human evolution, the ability to cooperate, to build a future out of the bones of the past. As they stretch the final, patched hide over the skeletal dome, the light inside dims. The roar of the wind softens to a mournful howl. It is not a home, it is a tomb, repurposed for the living, but for the first time in days. The teeth of the wind are not on their skin. The bone hut is a sanctuary of sound. Outside, the wind screams, a constant, high-pitched assault. Inside, the sound is muted, filtered through hide and bone into a deep, resonant hum, like the breathing of a sleeping beast. But this refuge from the wind is a cage for their hunger. For days, they have subsisted on marrow cracked from the ancient skeletons on tough scraps of dried hide, a diet of ghosts. Their new home has saved them from the cold, but it has only sharpened the edges of their starvation. They are trapped between the elements and their own biology. Kale and the other hunters have tried to stalk the herds of horse and bison. These icons are prehistoric animals, but their forest skills are a liability here. On the open steppe, an ambush is impossible. The prey sees them coming from 1,000 paces away, and the hunters are left panting in the vast emptiness. Their quarry long gone. The old ways are a language of ghosts, and the steppe is deaf to them. Terrake watches. He sits at the low entrance to the hut, his eyes narrowed against the biting wind.
They collapse.
A student of this new, brutal school. He does not watch the animals. He watches the world they live in. He sees how the wind carves shallow depressions in the frozen earth. He sees how a herd of saiga antelope, startled by a wolf, uses alarm, winding gully to mask its escape. He sees that the steppe is not flat. It is a tapestry of subtle folds and hidden pathways, visible only to those who unlearn the vertical world of the trees and learn the horizontal language of the grass ocean. He understands. They cannot stalk the prey. They must make the prey come to them. And they cannot get close enough to use their heavy spears. They must make their arms longer. He picks up a straight, grooved piece of driftwood, a rare treasure washed up from some forgotten river, and begins to work. With a sharp flint flake, he carves a small hook at one end. This is not just one of the ancient tools. It is an idea, a piece of primitive technology born from pure necessity. He shows Kale how to lay a light spear in the groove, how to use the wood as a lever to multiply the power of his arm. The atlatl, a simple device that will change everything. The plan is a whisper, a series of gestures and scratches in the dirt floor of the hut. It requires everyone. There are no spectators in the story of survival. Ela and the older children take large pieces of hide and move far upward and have a small herd of grazing horses. Tirakai and an older hunter conceal themselves in a shallow depression. Kate and the two other hunters lie flat in a narrow ravine downwind. The newly made spear throwers clutched in their numb hands. The signal is the cry of a hawk, imitated perfectly by Tirakai. At the sound, Ela and the children rise, shaking the hides, creating a wall of sudden, terrifying movement.
Preparing to fight
the
back.
horses bow,
This spirit of resistance
not randomly,
and problem-solving
but
drives
along the
human
path of
evolution
least
forward.
resistance, away from the threat, guided by the subtle contours of the land that Tirakai had memorized. They funnel directly towards the ravine. The ground trembles. The air fills with the thunder of hooves and panic snorts. For a heart-stopping moment, it seems they will be overrun. Then, Kale and the others rise. The spears leave their throwers not with a heave, but with a sharp, violent crack. They fly with a speed and flatness their arms alone could never achieve. One strikes a young stallion high on the flank. It tumbles, falls, and the herd thunders past it, gone as quickly as it came. The silence that rushes back in is absolute. Back in the bone room, the smell of roasting fat is a prayer answered. It is the first real heat their bodies have felt in weeks, a warmth that radiates from the inside out. There is no celebration, only a quiet, solemn intensity as they eat, restoring the energy the steppe has stolen. This is their new equilibrium, a life purchased with intellect and held together by the sinew of community. This cycle of challenge, invention, and cooperation is the engine of human evolution, turning a desperate band of refugees into pioneers. Later, in the flickering light of a dung fire, Ea takes a lump of reed ochre and grinds it with marrow fat. On the vast, curved surface of a mammoth rib above her, she paints a single, straight line. It is not art. It is data. It is a beginning. A story, etched in the bones of the old world, to be read by the new people they are becoming, to witness these moments, to trace the lines they drew on the walls of their world, is to understand the bedrock of our own. That is the chronicle we are charged to keep. If you feel the pull of this shared memory, then join us. Place your hand beside this and leave your own mark on the story. Their struggle is not an echo from a distant prehistory. It is the instinct that beats in your own chest, the drive to innovate, the need for community, and the unyielding will to see the sun rise one more time. This is the chronicle of our becoming. Listen for the whispers in the static of time. What story is written in the silence after the hunt?